All right, so get this.
Okay.
You've got a presidential transition.
Yeah.
Like no other
Right.
accusations of spying are just flying everywhere. Left and right in the middle of it all. Susan Rice and this whole unmasking thing.
Yeah.
Today we're going deep.
Okay.
We are going to separate fact from fiction.
Let's do it.
To try and figure out what actually happened.
It's a wild story.
Oh, yeah.
And it really gripped the nation, I think, partly because it all happened against the backdrop of such a crazy election.
Totally.
Trump winning was
shocking.
A shock to so many people.
Right.
And then the transition was already so tense. So much suspicion and animosity on both sides.
Absolutely. And then in the middle of all that, you get Mike Cernovich.
Oh, yeah.
This blogger drops this huge bombshell. Susan Rice, who was Obama's national security advisor, was requesting the unmasking of Trump officials.
Wow.
Who were showing up in surveillance of foreign targets.
Yeah, at first it was dismissed by a lot of the mainstream media.
Totally.
But then Bloomberg, even Zero Hedge, they come out confirming parts of it.
Yeah.
Citing White House logs as evidence.
Right. And all of a sudden, everyone's paying attention.
Yeah. It becomes
That's a big deal.
Impossible to ignore at that point.
Right.
Especially when you think about what Susan Rice herself said.
Oh, God.
Just a few weeks before that.
Okay.
On March 22nd, 2017, she just flat out said, I know nothing about this.
Wow.
Except we know from later reports that she did make those requests.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Right away, you have this
cloud.
This cloud of doubt.
Yeah.
This question of credibility hanging over everything.
All right, so before we get too far into the weeds, let's break this down for everyone listening.
Okay.
Unmasking.
Right.
It sounds like something straight out of a spy movie. Totally. But what does it really mean in the intelligence world?
So imagine this.
Okay.
U.S. intelligence is monitoring a foreign target.
Okay.
Maybe someone they suspect of terrorism. They're listening to their calls, reading emails.
Right, the whole 9 yards.
The whole 9 yards. And sometimes they pick up communications that involve a U.S. citizen.
Okay.
Someone who's not the intended target at all.
So like accidentally catching a friend's voice in the background.
Exactly.
Of a call you're recording.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, cool.
And to protect that U.S. citizen's privacy, their name is usually masked or redacted in the intelligence reports.
Got it.
So you wouldn't see John Smith. You'd see like U.S. person 1.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So then how does unmasking come into play?
Well, sometimes national security officials need to know who that U.S. person 1 is.
Right.
To understand like the context of what they're seeing.
Okay.
Maybe the conversation hints at a threat.
Right.
Or maybe it reveals something really important about the foreign target's plans.
Okay.
And that's when a designated official, someone with the proper clearance, can request to have that name revealed.
Okay, so unmasking in itself isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's a tool.
It's a tool.
But the question is, was Susan Rice using this tool the right way, or was there something more going on?
That's the question.
And that's where our deep dive comes in.
Exactly.
We've got this YouTube video from 2017 by Sam Chaney for a site called weaponisnews.com.
Right.
He goes all in on this.
He does.
He calls Rice's actions criminal.
Wow.
A deep state conspiracy to undermine Trump, even comparing it to Watergate, but worse.
He doesn't hold back.
He does not.
That's for sure.
And he really slams the mainstream media for downplaying the story initially.
Right.
But here's the thing, and this is important for everyone to know.
Okay.
The video itself doesn't really present any hard evidence to back up these claims of a deep state conspiracy or criminal intent.
Right. And the video doesn't explicitly address it. But we should acknowledge that unmasking as a process isn't illegal.
Right.
There are legitimate reasons why it happens, especially when national security is at stake.
So on the one hand, you've got this super passionate accusation from Chaney, but it doesn't have the proof.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, you have the argument that unmasking can be legitimate, even necessary.
Totally.
So how do we figure out what's going on here?
Well, that's where things get interesting. Because even if what Rice did was technically legal, that doesn't necessarily mean it was the right thing to do.
Okay.
And that's why understanding Susan Rice, her background, her motivations, That becomes so important.
Let's paint a picture here.
Okay.
According to Shani's video, Rice comes from a pretty impressive family.
Yeah.
Her dad was an economics professor.
Wow.
And the second Black governor of the Federal Reserve System.
Yeah.
And her mom was an education policy scholar.
So she comes from a family of high achievers.
Yeah, a background of success.
Absolutely.
And Susan Rice herself.
Right.
She's no slouch either.
Nope.
We're talking Stanford, Oxford, even a Rhodes Scholarship.
Wow.
Clearly a high achiever.
Yeah.
And that ambition carried through to her career.
You can see it.
She worked on the National Security Council under Clinton.
Right.
Then became U.S. ambassador to the UN under Obama.
Yeah.
And finally landed that top spot, National Security Advisor.
Yeah. That's a trajectory that puts her
in a powerful position.
In a very powerful position.
With access to some of the most sensitive information in the country.
Yeah. But it's also worth pointing out
that
she wasn't a stranger to controversy.
Uh-huh.
Think about the Benghazi attack.
Oh, right.
She was criticized a lot for her public statements about what happened there. And get this, according to Shani, she was even being considered as a potential candidate for Secretary of State under Obama.
Okay, so here you have someone with ambition, with a history of being in tough situations, and now she's requesting this unmasking of incoming Trump officials during a super contentious transition.
It's a lot.
Okay, now rewind for a second.
Okay.
Remember that clip where Rice denies knowing anything about unmasking?
Oh, yeah.
Well, we actually have that clip.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
All right.
And now, to really drive the point home,
okay,
listen to this quote from a later news report that confirmed her request.
Okay.
Susan Rice requested the unmasking of incoming Trump administration officials.
So you hear that denial.
Yeah.
So definitive.
Right.
And then knowing those requests were made.
Yeah.
It's kind of jarring.
Yeah.
Right?
It really is.
Suddenly, it's not just about whether unmasking was legal.
Right.
But about why the denial happened in the first place. Was it an accident?
Right.
Was it on purpose?
Was she trying to hide something bigger?
Was it something else entirely?
That's the question, isn't it?
It really is.
And that's why we do these deep dives.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the most interesting stuff isn't just the facts themselves, but the inconsistencies.
Yeah.
The things that don't quite add up.
Totally. Yeah, it really makes you wonder why she would deny it.
Right. Like, what was she trying to hide?
Was it strategic? Or did she just forget? Or was there something bigger going on?
And that something bigger is what so many people were talking about.
Right.
Remember, this was when Trump was already saying that the Obama administration was spying on his campaign. So when this whole unmasking thing comes out, it's like throwing gasoline on a fire.
Totally. It just fed right into that whole narrative.
The deep state.
The deep state working against Trump, which is what Chaney really focuses on in his video.
Right.
He basically says there's this group.
Yeah.
This rogue intelligence community.
Working in the shadows.
Operating in the shadows.
Yeah.
Trying to sabotage the incoming administration.
And you can see how that would appeal to people
totally
who already didn't trust the government, especially the people who thought the election was stolen.
Right, but then on the other side, you have people who thought, this is nothing.
Yeah, it's just routine.
Just normal intelligence work.
Exactly.
So how do you navigate between these two extremes?
Right, because the truth is, usually...
somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in between.
More complicated than either side wants to admit.
Okay, so let's try to find that middle ground. We know Susan Rice asked for these unmaskings, but why?
You're like, what were the reasons?
Were there real national security concerns, or is it political?
It was a crazy time.
It was.
Both in the U.S. and around the world.
Yeah.
Remember, there were a lot of global tensions, worries about terrorism and cyber attacks.
Yeah.
So it's possible Rice saw something in those intelligence reports.
Right.
Something that worried her.
That made her want to know who those U.S. people were.
Exactly.
She might have just been doing her job.
Right. Trying to protect the country.
But couldn't you also say that the political situation, like all the division, might have affected her thinking?
Absolutely. And it's worth thinking about.
Yeah.
Susan Rice's own political ambitions.
Oh, yeah.
Chaney says in his video that she wanted to be Secretary of State. So put yourself in her shoes.
Okay.
You're ambitious. You want to move up.
Yeah.
And suddenly you're dealing with this crazy transition of power to someone who's the opposite of everything you believe in.
It makes sense that her ambitions might have clouded her judgment.
That's possible.
Maybe she wanted to protect Obama?
Or maybe she was trying
or get ahead of any threats from the new administration.
And remember, we're talking about
a very competitive,
super competitive world.
Especially at the top.
Yeah, they have those high levels of government.
Yeah.
It's not always about doing the right thing.
Right.
It's about surviving and getting what you want.
So we've got all these possible motives.
Right.
National security, political maneuvering, maybe even some ambition. But we don't know for sure.
We don't know the full story.
Because we don't have those intelligence reports.
It's like we're trying to put together a puzzle, but we only have half the pieces.
We can guess, but we'll never really know.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole thing so interesting, so frustrating, and ultimately so unresolved.
Yeah. And Channy makes another good point in his video.
Oh, yeah?
He talks about Benghazi, specifically how Rice first said it was a protest that got out of hand.
When it turned out to be a planned attack.
Right.
A terrorist attack.
Yeah, and he uses that.
To say that maybe this is a pattern of her twisting the truth.
To make herself or her allies look better.
That's a big accusation.
It is.
And it definitely makes us think about her actions in the unmasking situation in a different way.
Right. If she was willing to lie about Benghazi,
yeah,
what else might she lie about?
And it makes you question.
It does.
Her judgment.
Whether we can trust her.
Like, was she really trying to protect the country?
Yeah.
When she asked for those unmaskings?
But she has some other secret plan.
It's a puzzle.
It is.
And probably one we'll never solve.
Yeah. But by looking at the pieces we do have.
Right.
By understanding the context, the politics, and the people involved, we can at least get a better idea of what happened.
So we've been talking about this Susan Rice unmasking situation. Yeah.
And it seems like this is about more than just this one thing.
Right. It's like it brought up all these bigger issues that we're still dealing with.
Like what?
Well, like government transparency, for one. The power of these intelligence agencies.
Yeah.
And the role of political ambition in all of this.
And don't forget about everything that was happening at the time.
Oh, yeah.
The 2016 election, Russian interference.
All of it.
And just this feeling that nobody trusts the institutions anymore.
Right. It was like everyone was already questioning everything. And then this unmasking thing comes out.
And it just adds to the chaos.
It created this situation where it was impossible to have a nuanced conversation.
Right. Everyone was just yelling.
Everyone was just yelling from their side.
Either Susan Rice was a criminal. Or it was all made up.
A witch hunt.
And that kind of division makes it hard.
It's so hard.
To get to the bottom of things.
Because when we're so busy trying to prove each other wrong, we miss the bigger point.
And what is the bigger point here?
I think the bigger point is that no matter what side you're on, this whole situation raises questions about national security and privacy.
Right. Because if unmasking can be used for political reasons.
Yeah. Or even if people just think it can. Then nobody trusts the intelligence agencies.
And that's bad.
That's a really dangerous thing.
Yeah, we have to be able to trust.
We have to be able to trust.
That these agencies are doing the right thing. That they're protecting us.
Right.
Not going after their political enemies.
Exactly. Because otherwise...
It's like a slippery slope.
It's a slippery slope.
Everything becomes about politics.
Yeah, and the truth gets lost.
So what do we do?
Well, I think we need to talk about it more.
Okay.
Like an open and honest conversation. About the power of the intelligence community and how it's being used.
And everyone needs to be part of that conversation.
Absolutely. Not just the politicians and the experts.
Right. We need the public involved.
You need to educate people about how intelligence gathering works.
And let them hold the people in power accountable.
Because in the end, it's all about trust.
Trust.
Trust in our institutions.
Yeah.
Trust in the people who are supposed to protect us. And trust that we can talk about these things.
Right, like have a real conversation.
A real conversation.
Without all the yelling.
Exactly.
And that's what we've tried to do here. We looked at the facts.
The different sides.
The questions that don't have answers.
Yes.
Hopefully it gave you something to think about.
Because this whole story...
As crazy as it is... Comes down to one question.
What happens when trust breaks down? How do we rebuild it? And how do we make sure the systems that keep us safe aren't being used against us?
Those are good questions.
They are.
Not easy to answer.
But by doing these deep dives, by looking at the details, by questioning what we think we know,
we can at least start moving in the right direction.
And you never know. We might even learn some new things along the way.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive.
Thanks for joining us.
We hope you found it interesting.
Yeah.
Keep looking into these things.
Keep asking questions.
Keep having those conversations.
Keep thinking.